Hey everyone, it's Saoirse, and today I'm going to tell you about the workshop that I went to with Cheryl Strayed. And if you don't know who that is, you might recognize this book, Wild. This is one of my favorite books, and she also has a column called Dear Sugar, where she gives people advice, and she published this book, Tiny Beautiful Things, which is a collection of those columns. If you want to cry constantly, I mean, both of these books are great for that. There's also a book of her quotations called Brave Enough. And this is her first novel, Torch. And while I was there, I went a little crazy and got 2 new copies. I got Wild and a different cover of Tiny Beautiful Things because she signed them. So there's her signature. So yes, if you're familiar with Wild, then you will totally understand what I'm talking about here. This woman is an absolute inspiration, and if you know me, writing and hiking are 2 of the biggest parts of my life, and she is an inspiration in both. I mean, she's written the most famous memoir of hiking the Pacific Crest Trail, and that is massively inspiring to me as somebody who loves to thru hike and write about it. So I'm going to tell you just a little bit about the workshop, what it was like. I've been to many writing workshops in my life. I've done a master's in creative writing. I've been lucky to have a lot of teachers teach me how to write. And I gotta say, this is one of the most useful writing workshops I've ever been to. She had so much to say in just less than 48 hours, actually. So let's backtrack. This workshop was a Friday through Sunday, but it started Friday night and ended Sunday morning. So there was a Friday evening session, a morning and an afternoon session on Saturday, and then a morning session on Sunday. And in just that amount of time, she gave us so much information. My pens were running out. I filled so much of this journal out, just writing down everything she said. And I really appreciate that it wasn't all like simple fillers, like here's how to write, just do this and pick up a pen. Like, it was more in depth than that, but also very easy to understand. So this workshop took place in Massachusetts. It's at a place called Kripalu, which is like a yoga retreat, massive building in the Berkshires in Massachusetts, in Western Mass. And so it's really close to the Appalachian Trail, so I actually got to get on the trail a little bit before I went to the workshop. And so it's just an absolutely gorgeous setting. You can see the mountains when you look out. My mom and I went together, and we had a 5th floor room, and so we were just like looking at the mountains. There's massive grounds where you can go and hike while you're there, and luckily I got to do that on the days when it was really nice, because the last day it was raining. And what else? There was incredible food. The food was out of this world. So it's a buffet situation, and they have a vegetarian line and a non-vegetarian line. And so I was quite happy going through the vegetarian line, and also there was a Buddha bar where it's like all cool vegan food. Oh my god, I ate so much. I mean, just like piled high, and it was all healthy and like, just delicious. So that was a major selling point. Oh yeah, and I did a couple of the yoga classes. Like, when you go to any of these retreats that are there, you can do so many things within this building, and I only had time for a couple yoga classes, and then I was like, listen, I gotta focus on the writing. But yes, so I will say, going into this workshop, hi baby, look who's here, Springy. Going into the workshop, I was not doing so great. I was in a very bad mental state. The week leading up to it, a few days leading up to it, had been the most wild roller coaster that I've experienced in a long time. And I was not coping that well. But luckily, my mom and I did get to see some amazing things in Massachusetts. The daffodils were blooming everywhere. There was literally a daffodil and tulip festival. Like, are you kidding me? Those are our two favorite flowers. Mine's daffodils, my mom's tulips. And so we loved that. We went to the Baby Animals Festival, where I got to pet a little lammy for the first time ever. One of my dreams. We went to the Berkshire Botanic Garden. We saw a lot of great stuff. Ventford Hall, I love old, fancy houses, so I was seeing a lot of great things. But there were a couple of really, really bad things going on in my personal life at the time. So I get to the workshop and I'm like, am I even going to be able to focus? I am not well. And it really like turned my mood around, or made me see the important things and the good things that were still going to come in my life, because obviously if you've read Wild, Cheryl is somebody who has faced immense grief and loss and come out the other side and made art out of it and made connection out of it. And I felt very inspired by that, because it's very easy for me to get into a state of mind where I just go, I guess there's no point now. Like, this bad thing after this bad thing just means it's always going to be bad and there's no hope whatsoever. And it's kind of embarrassing to try and like make an attempt to make my life be anything but crap. But she's really good at making you realize there is a point. You know, the point is taking care of yourself and being nice to yourself. And that there are so many good things to enjoy. And Cheryl is so funny too. She's so kind and genuine. And sometimes you do workshops and you think, like, this person is really full of themselves. But Cheryl was just so down to earth. I just gotta say, I love how much she curses. She's got such a sailor's mouth like me, and that was so enjoyable. And yeah, nothing she said seemed like, I mean, obviously she had a prepared presentation, but it didn't feel scripted. Like, she just, on the last day, was doing a Q&A thing where we had written questions throughout the weekend and she was going to, like, answer them all. But she did it in this, like, monologue, like, off the top of the head, let me just tell you about my life and that will explain how to answer these questions type of way. Which is just how she does Dear Sugar. Like, somebody asks her, what do I do about my boyfriend cheating on me? And she gives them a story from her life that completely tells you how to deal with this. She's just phenomenal at that. So, there's a box in the living room. The box is causing problems. One second. Sorry about that. We cats, we love boxes. So, where was I? Just that I felt like she really wanted to be there and really enjoyed what she was doing and meant everything that she said, which goes a long way. And this was not a small workshop. There were about 300 of us, which I didn't expect. I thought it was going to be maybe 100. It was massive. And that meant we didn't, like, one-on-one get to talk to her. So the fact that we learned so much in spite of that, it just blows my mind. Like, we were all in there, like, scribbling away in our notebooks. And even not being able to one-on-one talk to her, she made it feel like we were all connecting, because she did this thing where we would do writing prompts, and then she would randomly choose, like, 5 or 6 people for each prompt to come up and read to everybody. And so we got to know a lot of people's stories, and with each prompt we would pair off and read our prompt to another person. So, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, and the whole thing was called The Story You Have to Tell, which you can see 2 ways. The story you have to tell, like the one that's in you that you have, you own, and the story that you have to tell, like you really need to get this off your chest. And she said a really great thing on the last day when a lot of people had asked the same question, which is, how do we write about people who may be still in our lives or still alive, who impacted our life greatly, and we can't really write them out of the story, but we're either afraid of them or we don't want to hurt them. She said, write the story now. Nothing's stopping you from writing the story now. You don't have to publish it now. You can wait till they're dead. But I just liked how she said, whatever it is, even if it's not about another person, you can write whatever you want to right now. Nothing needs to be published at this moment. It can sit and it can wait, and it can wait for the right time. Thought that was great advice. So some of the things that she said that I just pulled out of my notes here is I liked how she said surrender to your own mediocrity. Because you think about it, if you're a big reader, and a lot of writers are, then you're probably wanting to emulate and be just like these people that you really admire. And she was saying, like, if you're trying to be a certain writer, like let's say you're trying to be Charlotte Bronte, if you're me, you're always going to be disappointed because you're not going to be on that level. That's impossible to be that person anyway. So just surrender to your own mediocrity and write the story. Just write it and see what comes out, and stop beating yourself up that it is not one of the, great classic writers. Because I think that stops a lot of us a lot of the time when we just feel like, why does our voice matter? It's not going to measure up, so why are we putting it out there? And then she said, to write well, you need these few things. You need craft, courage and heart, consciousness, and commitment. So we talked a lot about each of those things in the session. Craft, obviously, knowing how to write good sentences, and that I love that side of things. It can get really pretentious, especially it did in grad school, which I didn't care for quite as much, but it is very interesting to talk about the craft of writing. And of course, these are all rules that are made to be broken. You don't have to write a certain way every single time. Obviously, if you read widely, then you will see that there are all kinds of different ways to write. That if you didn't see my video I just did about Little Weirds by Jenny Slate, that is like a book of micro memoir, magical realism essays. That is not something I ever thought I would see, and it blew my mind. And it just shows you, like, a book does not have to be the same thing every time. A short story doesn't have to be the same formula. You can get really experimental. There doesn't have to be like a beginning, middle, and end, or really high stakes, a climax, even a main character. Like, it can be whatever you want. It's art. Courage and heart. You gotta be brave if you're gonna write about stuff, especially if you're writing memoir, which this workshop wasn't just about memoir, but it pretty much was. That's what we were all writing about in the prompts. So if you're gonna talk about your life, you gotta be brave, and that can be very, very hard sometimes. But I'm an open book for the most part. Surprisingly, you might be shocked to hear this, but there are things that I keep private, because it seems like I'm just an oversharer who tells you everything. There's a lot that I don't talk about publicly, but like some of those things I wish that I did have the courage, because some of it kind of needs to be there in order to make these stories make sense, and I'm getting there. You need consciousness. So she was talking about like being connected to the collective consciousness in the world. Like, what is something that everybody can connect to? So she mentioned in Wild, the part in the book when she's got all of her gear in this massive pack, and she's trying to lift it onto her back, and she can't do it. And she realized when she was writing the book, lifting the pack was something that she could not do, and we all, at some point in our lives, have to do the thing that we cannot do. And I feel like I'm going to cry talking about that, because that is so universal. And how many times have I said to myself, I can't do this? Like, whether it's a thing like a task or an emotional, like, I can't get through the loss of this, that, or the other. I can't cope with this rejection. I can't go on after this. And then the thing is, I just have to. So I really, really loved that point. And then commitment. If you commit yourself to something, you just gotta do it. And that's the thing, is holding yourself accountable. Because for me, after leaving grad school, I didn't have anybody telling me that I had to write. I didn't have any deadlines. There was nothing. And I just didn't write very much. And it's only very recently that I have found this writing community where there are people who are writing all the time and doing open mics and, you know, talking about submissions. And one of my best friends is going to grad school right now for poetry, so we get together and write, and he submits things and encourages me to submit. And we have a standing thing where if I don't submit, I have to pay him, and if I do submit, he'll buy me a little treat. So it actually is like really great to have that accountability. But if you don't have a writer's group or writer friends or anything, you've got to make yourself accountable. And like sometimes you're not going to have the motivation to do something. I say it all the time. I am not motivated to write, but then I just have to commit to it, which then overrides my lack of motivation. Like even if I'm sitting there like I don't think there's a point to this, I've written down that I'm going to write today, so I guess I kind of have to do it. But then don't beat yourself up if you can't stick to it. If you waver a lot, please don't beat yourself up. Life happens. It's just you got to work out what's important to you in this moment. Okay, and then she talked about how we have to do these things as well. We have to let the story be told. We have to let it be brave, be deep, be revelatory, be alive, and be tangible. So we went through in the couple of sessions on Saturday all of these different things and what they all mean. And like for example with alive and tangible, we talked a lot about details and like objects and talismans, things that I don't even think I need to explain that anymore. Obviously tangible means tangible. So like I said, during these sessions we did prompts. I think we did 7 or 8 prompts the whole time, which was a lot of writing. Like I couldn't believe I managed to keep that up when like I have really bad handwriting, and I was not using a laptop. I was really writing it the whole time. Went through a couple pens. So yeah, and I already mentioned we would pair off with people. So my mom and I really made an effort to not just read to each other the whole time. We went and found new friends, which was really cool. And it was mostly women, probably 95% women, which I totally expected. And it was so cool to get to know some of these people and like really quickly just know that, wow, everybody has a story, everybody has a tragedy. Everybody's got hope and joy and fear and love, and we're all just so damn connected, and I wish that was something that we got to feel more. She said that you should risk being too much. She mentioned this really funny story about how she did an interview after Wild was made into a movie starring Reese Witherspoon, and the interviewer said, "So, Reese, what is it like in your first role as an unlikable woman?" And Cheryl's just there like, okay. So we're not always gonna look great, I guess, in the stories that we write about ourselves, especially if we're honest. We are not gonna look great the whole time. But I thought that was so funny. Your first role was an unlikable woman. So she also mentioned that plot is what moves us forward, and the revelations that happen throughout the emotional plot are what take us deeper. So you can look at it as, the arrow going this way for the plot and the arrow going down for the emotional plot, which is just useful if like you're a visual person. And then commitment and follow through, like I said before, are more important than motivation. Write down a schedule for yourself, see how well you can stick to it. If you've got one story you're working on, try and see that damn thing through and then submit it somewhere before you move on to the next. I'm talking to myself right now because I have like 90 different stories and poems and books that I have open and unfinished and unsubmitted. So, okay, I'm just going to read you a couple of the prompts that we did. So one of them was, and with every prompt she would give us like 4 prompts, so you didn't have to do, if you like weren't inspired by one of them, you could pick a different one. So I picked for this one, I did a time when you almost died. And these are short. I should have died every day out there. 6 months, 185 tiny, agonizing scenes of my death. How good they would look, laid out like a bunch of cards, this deck of all my deaths. How clearly I would then be able to see all the ways I survived. How strong I was. 6 months in the woods in a fragile state of mind. Why didn't I die? There was the beginning when I set foot on the Appalachian Trail with hardly enough food for 2 days, much less the week it would take my aching body to reach the next road. There was the spider bite that I ignored for 6 weeks until it was purple and round and spreading a wild map of necrosis across my chest. There was the self-hatred, lighting a wildfire in my brain, telling me to jump from the top of every mountain. I died over and over, every day, until the old me was dead and gone and I came down from Katahdin ready to start over. I liked writing about the trail, being around somebody whose most famous book is about hiking. And then so we did an interesting thing where we wrote about, she had us write a letter to ourselves from our wise inner sage, and then we repeated it at the end. So it was the first prompt we did, and it was the last prompt we did. So I'll read you the first one, and then the second one, and just see how they compare. So, Dear Saoirse, this is your wise inner sage. This is what I know about the stories you need to tell, and here's my advice for you right now. You feel pretty ashamed, right? I know. But you don't have to. We've been around the block together quite a few times, and I think you've gotten a little better at listening to me. It's pretty cool having a wise inner sage, right? Not to toot my own horn, but I've guided you through some pretty important moments, and you're stuck with me for life. So stop acting helpless. Maybe that's step number 1. Sure, you're allowed to cry and feel everything as it comes up, but you're a wallower, and wallowing only makes you feel like you're stuck in the mud when you're actually not. So please don't wallow, because I can tell you for damn sure that even though you think snapping out of it is pointless and dishonest, it actually does help. I'm the honest part of you, believe me. I do struggle reading my own writing sometimes, so sometimes. Yo, I'm really tired today. Okay, and then this is the last prompt, the same prompt repeated. Dear Saoirse, this is your wise inner sage. This is what I know about the stories you need to tell, and here's my advice for you right now. You have wounds in you that other people can see. They don't have to look hard. You are sometimes a walking wound. You have cried to gain entry to closed rooms. You have been handed more set lists at concerts than most sane people, and every time you walk away from the stage, you fear the power of the deep desperation in you that tells people, please, I need this. How visible is it? The way you beg is not the way others beg. You have always been a beggar, because you have had to beg for love from those closest to you. So what to do now with this knowledge? How to make it serve you and not define you? Tell your stories. Lay your beggar heart bare. Let it beat for other beggars, other children who grew up and never got rid of the weight of sorrow on their shoulders. Write for you and them, and don't believe yourself when you think there's no point. The point is giving yourself what you've always sought in others. You will be so generous with yourself, you'll never have to beg. So I can see the way that my brain kind of shifted throughout that weekend. And also, I want to mention a very emotional part, the biggest part of this for me was I was signed up for a Cheryl Strayed workshop a few years ago, and it was going to be in North Carolina. And then my sweet baby girl, my angel, Caddy, she was diagnosed with a second cancer, and she had to have emergency surgery, and I was not about to leave my cat and go to this workshop. So I didn't go. And I lost Caddy a couple of years ago, and I don't write about it very much, and I don't talk about it, I don't share whatever I do write very much, because it is really, really painful. There was one prompt that was write about a talisman, and I chose to write about this necklace, which is an urn necklace, so it has some of her ashes in it, and I wear it every day. I wrote about that, and out of all the prompts and all the people there, Cheryl came up to me and asked me to read my response to this prompt. So the few of us went up there in front of everybody, and she held the microphone, and I'm, shaking, and as soon as I start reading it, I'm crying. And she hugged me, and it felt really great to get this out there and talk about Caddy, and it also felt like this massive moment of closure, because, like I said, I was supposed to do this workshop a few years ago before she got really sick. And so I had this kind of full circle moment, this closure moment of like, okay, this chapter's done. And also, I'm still going. When I lost her and all of the anticipatory grief before I lost her, I thought every day, I can't do this. There's no way that I can do this. And, watching it happen for so long and not being able to prevent it and believing like if I just do this, that, and the other, I can stop it from happening and she can stay. I just thought I couldn't live anymore. And doing things like this and forcing myself to go and live and get out there and not just participate but also care about myself when I felt so much guilt and emptiness after that. It's been really hard and a long journey to start caring about life again. After experiencing trauma, that's a common thing, I know. And yeah, so getting to share that story while at this workshop with Cheryl and my mom and all these people, it was really, really special and profound. And I feel like just after that week, I have so much to process, so much. Like, I can't even tell you, literally, I can't tell you everything that happened and why my brain is all over the place, but just believe me, it is. But so I'm going to read you that prompt that I read for the whole room. So it was right about one of your talismans. As soon as I knew there was a chance I could lose her, I knew I wouldn't survive a day without carrying her with me. So I discovered the existence of urn jewelry. When I sat with her and spoke to her while her soul went to the next place, I was desperate for her to feel peace, to know that she was my world, and I'd carry her always. I held her tiny body, skinny from the chemo, her lively tail limp across my arm, and I wailed. I held her all night, kissing her ears, memorizing the physical form of this cat who was my soulmate. The next day, I bought a delicate gold necklace engraved with her name and all her nicknames: Katahdin, Catty, Scoops, Sweet Cheeks. When I picked up her ashes, I wailed again at how small the bag was. I unscrewed the top of the necklace and funneled some ashes inside. I wore the necklace every day for a year, holding it and kissing it when I was scared or sad, and then one day it was gone. My wails were as violent as the day I'd lost her. It was like reliving it. I tore my house apart for 7 hours until I found it under a rug. I felt relief and then sorrow as I realized I'd been expecting to find her, not a thin chain and a pendant full of all that's left of her. So that was very hard to get through in the moment. I always find that when I'm like if I read anything that I've written about Catty, I think I can get through it, and then I'm saying it out loud, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm crying now. But yeah, that was just one of the worst days ever when I couldn't find this necklace. I'd take it off to shower, and I'd put it on my dresser like I always did, and it was just gone. And it turned out my other cat, the new little dude that came into my life last year, he had swatted it off the dresser to play with it and gotten it under a rug. And I'd looked under that rug. And then, hours later I looked again, and it's just, I hadn't lifted it enough, I guess, and it was way under there. Oh my god. And then the feeling of like, wait, I found it, but where is she? I don't understand, because I thought I was looking for her. Really hard. But yeah, so many people at this workshop had stories of grief, and some people came up to me after and talked about their pets and how people don't talk about it enough because we feel like our grief won't be taken as seriously, and when actually the truth is that for a lot of people, losing an animal is even harder than losing our human family. And everybody's story is valid. And I loved that she said in this workshop, 2 things can be true at once. She really reiterated that 2 things can be true at the same time. And that's something you have to keep in mind when you're writing memoir, because you're going to remember things in a different way than anybody else does. And so you might have people coming out of the woodwork to say, it didn't happen that way. Well, from my perspective, it did. So, yeah. So anyway, I loved hearing all of her stories about writing wild, and like every time she mentioned it, I was just like, I can't believe this is happening, and I sat right up front the whole time. I don't know what else to say. I hope that was useful. I planned to make this video for it to be like 10 minutes, and now it's been like 30 minutes, so I hope you stuck around. I don't usually do this sort of just talking about something that happened, because we can see I just don't have, I don't have a lot of talent for like editing myself and not going on and on and on. And then I don't like to edit my videos because I actually find it pretty annoying to watch videos where they're just like cut, 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 all chopped up. It's just like too jumpy, and I'd rather somebody just talk to me. So that's what, that's what I like to do in my videos. So for those of you who do stick around, thank you so much. And please let me know if you are a Cheryl Strayed fan and what you have read by her, if you have a favorite. And if you write, have you been to a writing workshop? Do you plan to go to one? Who is an author that you would just go nuts to do a workshop with them? For me, George Saunders. If he did a workshop, oh my god. And I know he has before. And he's actually friends with Cheryl Strayed, so she mentioned him, and I was like, But yeah, a lot of writers actually do them, so if you look into it, you might find that you can do one very soon. So yeah, do you write memoir? Do you write fiction? What's your jam? Did you resonate with any of this advice? Obviously, I did not tell you everything she said, because that would take hours, and also I don't want to just give away everything she said. So go to one of her workshops. It's totally worth it. And thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you all next time. Until then, happy reading.